doing so fine.
We were just talking about sleepovers. But do you remember like all the sleepover trends back in the 2000s?
Which ones?
Like, it was super popular to try to pull an all-nighter.
Yeah. Going on Omegle with your friends.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
It shouldn't have been a thing.
That was such a scarring thing. Like, and I'm pretty sure people still do that. But
yeah,
I don't know. It was like a trend where you go on Omegle and then just like try to see
who you talk with.
Yeah. But then like half the time they were just guys who were just nude on camera. And then you'd be like, And
that's exactly why I never did it, because like people would, well, not that I never did it. I didn't do it till like much later, like after the trend. And look, my biggest fear was we were gonna get like some nude guy on it. I don't think we did. No, I know we didn't, but I don't remember. Whoever we did end up matching with, sorry, but like did not leave an impression. So I was like, all right, that was fun.
I don't know. I always failed at staying up all night. I was always the first person to sleep. I
know. I remember you came to sleep over at my house, or when you stayed with us.
Yeah. Oh, did you ever like try to dip someone's hand in water during a sleepover?
No.
Or draw on anyone's face?
I think we drew on people's face. I think we've done that one, but I don't remember doing any like hand in the water thing. What about you? Have you done those? Weird.
I haven't done them because I was always the first one to fall asleep.
Oh yeah. Why am I even asking you?
Just wanted to know.
I've always wanted to do the one with the whipped cream on your hand, whipped cream on the person's hand, and then you tickle their nose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Never done that.
We'll have to have a sleepover sometime.
I know.
Anyways, welcome to the Midnight Memo.
Hiya.
We're so glad you're here. As you can tell, it is late at night and we're getting a little chaotic. Tonight we wanted to talk about family. And so since this has been kind of top of mind lately, keeping us up. So I guess starting off, what makes a family?
What would you classify makes a family?
I don't necessarily think that. I mean, the idea of a family has changed so much over time. Yeah. Like, if we compare what our generation is doing to what our grandparents' generations were doing, it's totally different. Like, from my family's background, like, my grandparents, I think, were married by, like, 18, you know? And they were, they grew up in Kansas. They were, like, a small farming town. And so it's, like, you meet your husband young. Yeah. He's a good guy, like, and you build a life together. And then even so, like, our parents' generations, I still think that they started families much earlier. And nowadays, like, millennials and stuff, like, we're trying to push back marriage. And I think the average is now late 20s, early 30s for marriage.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not so surprising to me. Late 20s definitely tracked. So, therefore, early 30s isn't that far of a jump, but I don't know why hearing early 30s I'm like, oh really, that seems so interesting. And I think it's still that like warped ingrained perception of you want to be married at least before you're 30. I don't know where I've heard that before, but I feel like that's I don't know, somewhere that's stuck in my brain.
It's definitely the traditional mindset of like you want to have kids while you're still young, and it's the idea from
while you can before your biological clock is ticking.
I
have feelings.
You want to have a lot of kids, and you want to, build the traditional, I guess like the nuclear family. Of like 2 parents, a couple kids, a dog. The white picket fence and the house and the whatever. And it's kind of funny because I like my personal story is very non-traditional.
But your family up until you was
my family
pretty
up until
traditional from what you just said.
So the biological clock for women is like super ingrained.
When you were talking about the traditional family too, right there explaining your family, I thought about it and I was like, I guess my family's always been not very traditional. Like in my immediate family, I have a half sister, which for nuclear family purposes is kind of a Scandi thing. Can be. And my sister's older than me. She's 8 years older than me. But when I was a kid, like from being born, I knew about her, right? And I knew she was my half sister. My parents made that very clear, just so I knew I had a sister even though I didn't see her around. And then partly because I was a small child and I was like obsessed with having an older sister, I like leaned into that so much where I would kind of like flaunt it, like I have a half sister. Ooh. Which I don't know why that was like a flex to me, but it was like for little me. And then both of my parents have are children of divorce in some way. My grandpa remarried on my dad's side, and then my mom's parents, they both remarried a few times. My mom has 8 half siblings on her side of the family, so like redirecting and reshuffling has always been, I think, a thing in our family. It was weird in the sense of like, oh, that's so crazy, I have all this family, but I never thought much more beyond that of like, oh, this isn't normal, I think. So yeah. I think also it comes from, so that's just like my family, but also where I grew up in Hawaii, I think it's just so common to have large families and mixed blended families that I never really thought of. I've heard about the nuclear family thing, but I think I didn't really think about it or hear that term until like high school world history, or sorry, US history. Honestly.
I mean, that makes sense because like right. I think the concept of the nuclear family only relates to the US definition of what family is, like the very traditional colonized version of what a family should be, which even then, back in the day when they defined like, oh, you know, the nuclear family, it's a mom, a dad, sister, a brother, and a dog named Spot. And even back then, I feel like it could not have been like the majority of people who had that type of family, but it was painted out to be like, this is what you want. Yeah.
And if you don't have it, you're off.
Yeah. Like, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't, like, what if you want only 1 kid? What if you want 3 kids? What if, like, and then they're already out. 3 kids
was also accepted. I think 2, 3 kids, it was like, okay, you're pushing it, but like, we're still going to accept it. And then anything.
Yeah. But it was just like, I don't even think the time in which they were defining what a family is, the majority was actually following in the steps of that definition. Yeah. Which is funny to think about. And it, like you were saying, they were only taking into account the US population. Like in a lot of other cultures, shocking, there are other people out there in the world that have different ideas of what a traditional family is. So like back then in China, you're only allowed to have 1 kid. Right. Yeah, that traditional like nuclear family is different from what the US definition would define as a family. And so I think it's just like, so that whole definition is kind of pointless and stupid.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But I guess I never really thought about it because I was just, for me, it was always, I don't even know where I would draw the line of like, obviously my family, if you're talking my immediates, it would be, my parents and my siblings. But I think usually when I think of family, I would also even go beyond that of like the aunts, the uncles, like that sort of a thing. And I think, again, that's just of where I'm from, where like if literally everyone is referred to as auntie and uncle if they're older, if they are a family friend or even your neighbor, like someone you associate with regularly and they are older than you, that's auntie already, like, or, you know, older than you and their male uncle. Or like even there was like when I was younger and there was the group of girls that I like regularly cheered with, I called them my cheer sisters, and I would often refer to them as like my sister. But also having one biological sister, it would be confusing sometimes. Even now, sometimes I forget, and I still do refer to like that group of girls like from my childhood as like my sisters. And sometimes I'll just like say that, and like people who know that I refer to them as sisters will be like, okay, wait, which one? Like of the cheer variety or the blood variety? Like what are we referring to here? Yeah. But I don't know. Where do you draw the limit on a family?
I think everyone can define family on their own terms. Like I have best friends that I would consider family. Like if you're willing to like share your life's journeys, the good, the bad, and you want them around, like those are family members. Yeah. Like if it would hurt to lose them, those are family members, really.
Ooh, that's an interesting definition.
You know? Yeah. Like I because they're like, me personally too, I can cut people off like lickety split. It's not something I would brag about because I don't really think like it's a great quality to have, but like like if I would genuinely like be sad about losing them, that means that we were genuinely really close and I would want them to be in my life. And so that is when I think, you know, your friends or your non-blood related,
your chosen family sort of a deal.
Your chosen family becomes family. So that's how I kind of define family.
That's fair.
And especially because, on a funny side, I'm not even related to blood related to my actual family. So I'm like, yeah, half the time I'm like, to my friend Rachel when we were growing up, I was like, you're probably closer related to my family than me. But it's fine. It's whatevs.
I know you always make jokes of like, if I take a picture with my family, I definitely stick out.
Yeah. Everyone's literally light skin. They're very Caucasian. They have bright blue eyes or bright green eyes and like dark hair. And then I'm just brown, like everywhere. It's just like, okay, cool.
We get one color and one color only.
Yeah. I was showing family photos to Bud the other day, and I was like, can you find me in this photo? Where could she be?
Where could she possibly be?
Yeah.
Jesus.
But what's your definition? When do friends become family?
Friends become family. I don't know. I don't know where I draw the line, really. I think you just know. In a weird way. I think it's like when, and it depends how you interact as a person, but like for me it's like when I'm having them over all the time, like, and I always want that person around, when I want to do everything with them or include them in some way, shape, or form. That's like, now when I want to include you in my life, like now you're my family, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
I had a friend growing up. She was literally just my neighbor. Well, not just my neighbor. That sounds so rude. But like, okay. So she was my neighbor, and she was around my brother's age, actually, and her brother was a year younger than me, so close to my age. Anyways, we just got really close at some point. Don't exactly remember how that happened. I don't know. At some point, we decided that we are now best friends. And it was, I remember literally going over to her house like every date for like every weekend for like sleepovers and stuff like that, or she'd come to my house and we'd just like alternate. And I think we had the longest sleepover we had was like almost 2 weeks. Whoa. Where we like weren't like, we were just together, like never apart. And we just did everything like our brothers both did baseball together, so we already were spending a lot of time together, but then on top of that we still were like actively trying to spend a lot of time together. And I had a family tradition where we would go over to my aunt's house every year for Christmas, and we'd make gingerbread cookies. And one year, the middle of our sleepover happened to fall the night before. And I was like, oh, Mom, can she just come with us anyways to gingerbread making the next night? And blah, 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 blah. Okay, that works out. So she comes to the gingerbread making the next day, and my entire family loved her. It was great. It was a whole thing. And then it just kept happening for a couple years. So at some point, probably around like year 3, it was just expected. And my aunt also had a tradition of taking pictures of like all of us kids with our gingerbread and everything, and she's in all those photos. So my aunt, I saw her at one of the weddings I went to a couple weeks ago, and she brought that up, how she has like all of the pictures from like my entire childhood with the gingerbread, and it has this friend in there for like at least a decade of like her and my family photos for this gingerbread making thing.
It's so cute.
It's really cute. Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah, miss her. It's been a while, but like I would consider, like, she's definitely family, you know.
Like there's, I think, a lot of occasions when you have close friends who become family, but then like the family that you're not close with, do we still consider them family?
Do you mean like extended? So not like your parents or your siblings, like the family right outside of that circle.
Yeah, like right outside of the immediate circle, I think everyone has those family members that they're really not close with, or they don't get along with, or even say within your immediate family, I think there are a lot of cases when people aren't close with their mom or aren't close with their dad, or like they kind of cut those ties. Do we still consider them to be family?
I mean, I think that depends on, obviously that depends person to person.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of hard to state because I don't think either of us are really in that position. But I think the closest way I could relate is that, I mean, my mom isn't my biological mom. My mom's my adoptive mom, but I would consider her my family, and my biological parents, they're not my family.
Right.
You know what I mean? I could potentially have siblings somewhere else, but would I consider them family? No.
Right.
They're complete strangers. I don't know them. So I definitely think just like overall, the definition of a family is really like, there is no definition.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think literally what we were already saying is like, it's case by case. Like if you have an estranged, I think that's a word. If it's not, don't correct me. If you have a tense relationship with what would normally be classified as like your family, like your parents or your siblings, then I feel like usually from people who do have those relationships, what I've heard is they just redefine the family. So when they say my family, usually they're using that in reference to people who already know the situation of like, oh, you know that I mean everyone but this sibling or everyone but this person, you know, whatever, wherever they are drawing that line. So like you said, I think it's very case by case. You draw your own line of like where your family is.
Yeah. I don't have a good transition.
I was just thinking about this.
No good transition. Maybe we put an ad here. Hello. If you're hearing this, that means we have found a break in our trains of thought. I know. Kind of crazy. Like our podcast isn't chaotic or something like that. Anyway, this week we have a sponsor for this episode, and our sponsor is Newsly. And you're probably wondering, what is Newsly? Well, Newsly is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. It picks up the most trending articles on the web on topics you choose at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time, the entire web becomes listenable, all in one place. So you can stop scrolling and start listening. You can follow any topic as specific as you'd want, from sports to business or even the Kardashians. And they have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 80 countries. Our podcast, The Midnight Memo, will be there too. So make sure to check them out, download and use Newsly for free now from www.newsly.me or from the link we have down in our description. You can also use the promo code TMM for 1 month of free premium subscription. That is right. So make sure to go check us out on the Newsly app. And now back to the podcast. But I guess, like going back to the idea of the nuclear family, like in early 1900s, right? You would get married, you'd be together for the rest of your life. Right. Like, I think it was 70% of marriages you stayed married. Then like our parents, like our parents' generation, I think it was 50 to 60% of marriages. I thought that was our percent. Oh no, you're right. Okay. Yeah, of marriages would stay together, and now our generations and younger generations,
TBD.
Yeah, they dipped. Yeah, there was a slight dip in the charts.
We're in a downward direction.
Yeah, and so again, taking a quick hard turn from the traditional family unit. I think a lot of our generations have grown up in non-traditional families, whether it's separated parents or blended families or single parent homes, or maybe your legal guardian isn't your mom or your dad. You have moved around or whatnot. So when it's our turn to start thinking about what is our future going to be.
Don't include me in that statement. Let me cut to it. I don't want kids. And I get so much flack for that when I tell people that. Especially old. I mean, I don't really tell, the older my parents. Well, my parents do now. I've made it crystal ass clear with my parents. My mom, I think she's fully accepted it. She's all right. I've told her, I'm not having kids. The only kids you're going to have for me is of the fur variety. Meet your grand dog. And that's when I introduced them to my dog. My mom's like, all right, cool. My dad has been like a little weird about it. He's much better now, but when I first told him, he's like, oh, you're just of that age. And from what I can tell, other people that I have seen on social media, roughly of our age, that also don't want to have kids, I think it's very common for parents, or just, I guess, the older generation, to kind of push back on that as like a hand wavy excuse of like, oh, but you're just so young, like you don't know, or, you know, you'll change your mind later, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine and fair and valid. I really don't think so, but I might, and maybe I'll eat my words on this later. But as of right now, really don't want to. And it just, I fucking hate it when they tell me that, when people are like, oh, you'll change your mind later, blah, 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 you're still young. I'm like, yes, I'm still young, that's the point, and that's exactly why I'm not thinking about it. And I am thinking about it because there's a biological clock, and I feel like media and society is telling you, like, or at least telling me, I feel like you need to, like, your biological clock is running, I'm entering my I think I am 24, mid-20s, like, you're in your mid-20s, like, you got to start thinking about it to hit the timeline of being married and having kids before you're 30, and that sort of a deal that, like, you were talking about earlier. But I'm like, if I don't plan to, I don't have to stick to your timeline, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is like way back. I keep like referencing grandparents' age and like our parents' age, whatever.
Right.
We weren't living as long as we are now.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the careers model that they followed, which I think a lot of the time would motivate their, you know, personal lives on when to have kids and all that stuff, it's completely changed. Like, their
the timelines are different.
Yeah, the timelines have completely evolved. So our parents would be like, I have a 9-to-5 job, the same job for 40 years, and then I retire. Nowadays, our generations are, I want to do this for a certain amount of time. Like, I want to be in tech. Oh, I want to start a business. Oh, I want to do this. And we have multiple careers.
I'm going to take a break in the middle.
Yeah.
Like not work for a few years, mini retirement, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we now have more opportunities than they did growing up. So it's like, we want to take advantage of that. Yeah. So again, that changes the timeline and changes of like, what do we actually want to do right now? Yeah. So, and medically, we have a lot more options than they did back then as well.
But yes, technically we should, but different issue. If you really want to know about that, listen to the Corpses Have More Bodily Autonomy Than You episode. I don't remember what number that is right now, but that episode where we talk more about that. But yeah, like you said, we have more options now. And I think in general, like, okay, if we're going to go back to our grandparents' age, right? Usually women, yes, patriarchy said you stayed home. So there's no need to push back the timeline of when to start having kids, right? Because you can start having them right away. Most people of our age now most women have some type of career, or some, you know, are working. And if they're career driven, having a kid puts a hold on that. I don't care how you want to slice it, it's going to put a hold on that.
Yeah, it's priorities change no matter what happens.
It's going to interrupt it some way, shape, or form. And then unfortunately, as women, we have to make a choice on that. And I think even more so, going even a step back, like, I have had a few really close friends who did also have kids very, very early. And I saw the effects of that. And teenage pregnancies are so different from if I were to have a kid now, right? But still, like, seeing that, I think, at an early age of, like, what entails having a kid just made me think, personally for me, I don't want to. Like, I want to be selfish. I don't want to have to figure out, okay, do I want to be a career woman, or do I want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do I want to do both? But there's only so many hours in a day to do both. Oh my God, you have to be so dedicated. Like, something's got to give at some point, and usually it's sleep. I don't want to give up on sleep. I barely get any as it is. Like, So just for me, I don't want to have to make decisions like that. So I don't want to have kids. Yeah. And when when I tell people that, like, going back, when I tell people that, they're like, oh, you change your mind, blah, 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 blah. Or they'd be like, why not? And I'm like, girl, why not? What do you mean, why not?
Yeah. I mean, I'm to each their own. You
Yeah.
know? It's a big decision. And I think that it's, from an outside perspective, especially when you don't have kids already, it can come off of like, oh, like, why not? Yeah. You know, it's like, but once it actually happens and you sit down and you think about it, you're like, it's expensive. One, it's time consuming. Two, it's a big commitment. It's not something that just,
I'm responsible for another human.
Yeah.
I don't like being responsible for myself.
It's a big decision to have. So
yeah,
I understand when people are like, I don't really want to. And right now, honestly,
in this economy,
literally, in this economy, enter Marge Simpson. In this economy, yeah, it's like the state of the world makes it a lot harder to kind of piece together the ideas of like how you would be able to support having a family. Yeah. And it's like, you don't want it to come down to numbers, but at the same time, you don't want to bring a kid into this world when you can't support it correctly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I understand. Yeah.
And not saying that I don't like kids. I love kids. They're freaking adorable. I don't want my own. I am so happy to be an aunt. Like, for my nieces, my soon-to-be niece, like, my nephews, like, I fucking love it. I love it. They're so, oh my God, they're so cute. I love kids. But I just have no desire to have my own. I will happily live vicariously. I'll do the babysitting. I will, help out where I can. But, like, at the end of the day, I get to give it back.
Yeah. Poop pants. Ah.
I get to, at the end of the day, when it's crying and screaming, it's going home with you, not me. And that's how I like it. Just not for me.
Yeah. And there are a lot of kids out there right now that don't have families anyway. So if anything, like, adoption.
Always adoption. There's also the other side of the spectrum, because I feel like I've just been ranting about how I don't want to have kids, of people who do want to have kids.
Yes, I do want kids.
Yes.
And
why?
Why would you want kids?
Why do you want kids?
Honestly, at this point, I think in our generation, it's as valid as the question of why do you not want kids?
No, I think, I think it's very 50-50 from what I see.
Yeah. I think, nowadays a lot of people are like, I will be the cool aunt. I will buy them presents, whatever.
Right.
But then on the same side, or a different side, sorry, there's that, like, I do want to have kids. And, like, I think I'm definitely on the side of wanting kids. I think it stems from a couple of different places, though, where because I'm adopted and I'm not blood related to any of my family, I do have a kind of selfish motivation to have a kid of my own.
Yeah.
And when I say I want to have kids, I have had a lot of questions of like, oh, are you going to adopt too? And it's like, I want to be like, yeah, adoption. But at the same time, I'm like, I was adopted. Yeah. And with being adopted, there are a lot of questions that go unanswered, which I've made peace with at this point. But I also do know that, like, if I had the option to know, I would want to know. If I, like, so having those motivations, I do want to have a kid of my own. And so that, like, maybe I could provide them with more information than I had, And I've always, I think from a young age, I've definitely had I want to be a mom. Yeah. And I don't think, not everyone has it, but I know that from a young age, I was like, I want to be a mom when I grow up, like.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. Like, I would have, like, all the dolls and everything like that. And so I also am very close with my mom, and even though I have a very small family, we're all very close, and I want to create that environment for my future, I think. And so when I get older, like when people start dropping like flies, like I want to have people there, like I want to still have kids. I want to help take care of their families. I want them to help take care of me, and I think that's another motivation where I'm like, I want to have a family. Like I want to, when people, you know, inevitably peace out, you know, like who's going to be there. And that's what kind of what I think about as well.
That's fair. I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So that's what I think where I'm coming from in this in the spectrum of I want kids and like all that stuff.
Is that why people have kids? For someone to take care of them when they're older?
I think it's a pretty big motivator for a lot of people.
I think you've hit the nail on the head on that one, because I've definitely heard comments about that, but I've never really thought about the gravity of that, like, as it applies to me. It's just when people make comments, like, when I've heard people make those comments, I'm like, that's kind of selfish of you. But I mean, not saying that I changed my tune on that. I still feel like it kind of is a selfish reason, but like, alternatively, I've never thought about
it's a selfish reason, but at the same time too, like if I'm looking at my personal family, like my grandfather was gone before I was born. I think he passed away when my mom was in her young adulthood. And with that, you know, luckily my grandma was a social butterfly and everyone loved her. But at the same time, when we lived an hour away, and my aunt, uncle, and cousin lived an hour away from my grandma, like it could get lonely, you know. And then similarly, we have a really close family friend, which is actually my grandmother's best friend. She just picked up her life mid-80s from Florida to move to Washington to be closer to the family. Wow. Because she was lonely, you know, and it's like you want to have someone there, you know.
That's so fair. That makes sense. Yeah.
It definitely is a selfish reason, but at the same time, it's more people to love.
That's true. That's true. It's okay. I'll just love your kids. I'm okay with that.
I'll force my kids to take care of you too. And Gab.
Dang. See, I don't need to have kids. I got yours. I'll selfishly abuse yours. It's okay.
We'll just go into the same old folks home.
That's what I was thinking too. Like, because right now I do have an uncle who's kind of sick and ill, and he's actually a bachelor. So he's never been married, never had kids, and he's actually the youngest of the 5 siblings of my dad's mom. But because he has no kids, no one's taking care of him. So actually my dad and my uncle stepped up, and they're taking care of him, like sorting out things that he needs to get sorted out now. But he still lives in Hawaii, and both my dad and his brother live in Nevada. So that's trying to help out from across the Pacific Ocean and a state. Like it's tough. So I know that's been tough on him and my uncle and my grand uncle, I guess. Like that whole situation's been hard, but I've never thought about I've noticed and I've observed how that's hard, but I've never thought like, oh, could I be in that situation if I don't have kids? I don't think that really changes my answer, but it's definitely something to plan ahead for. I feel like I've just never thought that far ahead because I'm...
What, you're not an overthinker?
I'm an overthinker,
like
but
me?
about like... I feel like I'm an overthinker about like the immediate stuff, like the next 5 years, the next 10 years. I feel like I don't think that much farther into the future.
That's good.
Because that's terrifying. Like right now, thinking about this, I'm fucking stressed.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I think I'm an overthinker, but I know that thinking that far ahead is going to like cripple me. So therefore I selectively like black that out.
That's a good skill to have.
Can't go that far. Like there's a line in the sand where my brain's like, okay, we think 5, we think 10 years. Oh, we can't go any farther. Backtrack. Yeah.
I'm in a loop of, it's similar to the Hannah Montana's, you get the best of both worlds of overthinking immediate things and overthinking future things.
Wow, she's diverse.
Yes, it's great for me. And then I get into the, oh shit, I'm getting too anxious and sad, and like then I remind myself of the thing, like if it's not affecting you in a couple years, if not affecting you in a couple weeks, like all of that stuff. And then I'm like, I try to reel myself back in a little bit. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I don't really know. I feel like, I mean, even now my idea of family is ever evolving because I mean, my mom got into a relationship in her adulthood later than whatever's traditional buzzword traditional buzzword nuclear family, and her boyfriend has 3 children, and so now me growing up 25 years of being an only child, I now have these sort of step siblings that I've never had to deal with a step sibling dynamic. I mean, we're all full grown adults, and so we all have our own separate issues anyway, and so now it's kind of like, oh, what are these new family events that we're gonna do, and like trying to relearn the dynamic of being a blended family much
later in life.
Like it's so funny because I think a lot of the movies that you'll see on blended families, like they're still in their teen years, they're still growing up, they have to move in together. They have to learn how to share a bathroom now with like a complete stranger and all that
stuff.
Which
does suck. That's valid.
I could imagine that sucking. But it was kind of funny too, because the first family function I went to out at the lake house a few years ago, yes, on the East Coast, the oldest daughter, she was like, has anyone had the step sibling talk with you yet? And I was like, no. And she's like, yeah, because it's weird because we're adults. I was like, yeah. And she was like, all right, well, welcome to the family. Like,
I was like, she's like, good. Not going to give it to you either, but like, good to know.
Yeah. But it was just kind of funny to like sit back and be like, oh yeah, like we kind of are step siblings. Oh yeah, we're adults. So it doesn't really change the way we're living it now. But like, except for now we're kind of getting to know each other's family dynamics. You know, like I know I can visually see and like feel like the dynamics between like the 3 of them, and like I'm really close with the younger sister, right? Just because she also lives in San Diego, and the brother and older sister live on the East Coast, so I don't really get to see them all that often. But then like I can see the dynamics between like them and their mom, and then they can probably see the dynamics between me and my mom and my family. And like whenever we all get together, like the dynamics change again because it's like we haven't seen you in like a whole year and things like that. So it's kind of funny to still be learning how to be a family in adulthood. But I think that it's kind of a constant change when you're like bringing in new friends and bringing in new family, and it's always being redefined.
That's true.
Ohana means family. And what does family mean?
Ohana in Hawaiian. No, I'm not going to be cheesy. I don't want Disney coming after me.
Fine. No,
I'm kidding. You can finish it.
No, I did the first part.
Nobody gets left behind.
Yay.
Or forgotten. Everyone forgets that second one. The second line. Or
they forgot the forgotten.
Yeah! What the fuck is up with that? Anyways.
Yeah. I guess closing thoughts. Family is what you make it to be. There's no right answer for what family is. Everyone can define it on their own.
You don't need to have kids.
There's no right way to define what you want your future family to be. And that people want different things, and I don't think that you have to necessarily have to defend what your wants are to the world, because everyone wants different things. You don't have to be exactly the copy of the person next to you. So
divided line.
Even though a lot of people say we look alike, we don't.
Or confuse us. It's fine.
It's fine. It's whatever. We both have dark hair.
So do a lot of people. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Midnight Memo, talking about families, children, not wanting children, opinions on that, what makes up a family, and how you define a family versus the description that sometimes society tells us to. It's all flexible. It's all whatever you want to make of it, and just kind of talking about our family dynamic stories. What else? all of our socials will be listed somewhere on the screen if you're watching this video on Spotify podcasts videos. Otherwise, it'll be linked down in the description. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, any ideas for future episode topics, or if you want to talk to us about your family dynamic and just chat.
Yeah. And make sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review. It would really help us out. Yes. And follow us on our other social medias.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys again so much for joining us, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.